nearly 40 years, Volkswagen has offered the Golf GTI here in America. This has long been known as the standard of the hot hatch segment, simply because it was that good when this car came out. Now, of course, this current generation model has been around for a few years, since 2015, and Volkswagen is working on an all-new Golf GTI for the 2020 model year. However, this week the company has loaned me the latest Golf GTI, painted in tornado red. It's got 8 more horsepower under the hood, a new trim level for 2019, and some additional standard equipment. So the big question I want answered is the 2019 Golf GTI still the perfect hot hatch? That's what we're here to find out. So the biggest change for 2019 on the GTI is what's going on underneath the hood. Yes, the engine stays the same. However, VW has turned up the wick. It now makes 228 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. It's still a 2-liter turbocharged direct injection 4-cylinder, their TSI engine family, the E888 engine family. This motor is widely used across the Volkswagen lineup, and in the Golf GTI, it makes pretty much the top power it's going to make at this moment. It all goes out through either a standard 6-speed manual transmission, or there's a new transmission they added last year, a 7-speed dual clutch. This particular one here actually has the dual clutch transmission, and VW says you should get to 60 in just under 6 seconds. As this one sits, it weighs around 3,200 pounds, so it's a little bit heavier than something like a Civic Si or a Hyundai Veloster R-Spec or a Veloster N. Golf Rs or GTIs are only front-wheel drive. Remember, of course, they do include a limited slip differential, which is standard for the 2019 model year. And then fuel economy, of course, is pretty good. You're going to get around 25 in the city, 31 on the highway if you guys get the dual clutch. It practically stays the same with the manual. GTIs, surprisingly, are only equipped to run on regular gas, so you can put regular in this car. Now, closing the hood, you can see the design of this car definitely still has a very distinctive look. The company did give the GTI a pretty significant refresh for 2018. And honestly, I had a Golf R back in June of this year, and I have to say the GTI looks more aggressive to me, which is strange because this is supposed to be one notch on the totem pole lower than the Golf R. But you can see LED headlights are actually optional. This particular one here is the Autobahn package, so you have the adaptive swiveling LED headlights. If you guys go for the base S GTI, it'll actually have halogen headlights. The new Rabbit edition is what includes the LEDs. Unlike the Golf R, you also have LED fog lights, where the S also includes the LED fog lights as well. I kind of like the way the design is, although I kind of wish that the black painted area here, or the black area here, was painted glossy to kind of match what you get in the grille on this upper portion. I don't like how it's 2 separate finishes of black on the front fascia, so that's something to keep in mind. There is a radar sensor behind the Volkswagen emblem because this car does have adaptive cruise control. You get that with the Autobahn package. Now, the GTI is, for me, the perfect size for a hot hatch. It's wheelbase at 103.6 inches long and at 168 inches long. This is a good 6 to 8 inches shorter than most of the competition, and I think VW has done a really good job with preserving the size. The wheels on this Autobahn package are not my favorite. I don't particularly love the directional spokes of this. I do like the machine finish with the black painted accents. If you guys go for the Rabbit edition, you'll actually have a black finished 5-spoke wheel, which looks fantastic. These upgraded brakes were made standard for 2019. Before, you had to like option in a performance package to get more power, the limited slip diff and whatnot. This panoramic sunroof also is included on the SE trims and up. Remember, you can't even get a pano sunroof on the Golf R, so that's something to keep in mind if you guys like that. And overall, it's got a very traditional hot hatch shape. It's very conservative, actually. Even when you look at the back of this car, they updated the taillights with a full LED taillight design, which is nice. LED turn signals as well. You have LED tag lights. And then, unlike the Golf R, you just have 2 exhaust pipes coming out, which again, these are chrome tipped. They look fantastic. I'll let you guys hear what the engine sounds like really quick. And just like the Golf R, it makes a very nice muted, understated growl. It's not super shouty like what you're gonna get on some of the competition. Now, like every other Golf, if you wanna open up the hatchback, you can push the Volkswagen emblem in there, and that will open up the hatch to reveal about 23 cubic feet of space with the seats up. If you fold down those seats, you're gonna get around 52 cubic feet of space. That's actually more than what you're gonna get in the Honda Civic hatchback, but a little bit less than what you're gonna get in the Hyundai Elantra GT N-Line. Okay, so the outside of the GTI hasn't changed, but what about the interior for 2019? First things first, let's get in the car and shut the door. And it has a really solid thunk. That's basically what I expect in any German car. And the GTIs, most of them will come with the push-button start intelligent access key. You can see VW still uses the switchblade key, so just put your foot on the brake because this one's the dual clutch. push the button here by the shifter and that will fire up the engine. Now you can see here, this particular one being the Autobahn package has the 8-inch in-car-net display. It also includes Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. If you guys go for the lower trims, you'll have a 6.5-inch screen here, so it's a little bit smaller. This has been updated for 2018. It looks fantastic, but what you are noticing that it's missing is the digital cockpit display. The big 12-inch digital cockpit display is not available on GTI, which is interesting because you can get it on Volkswagen GLI and the Golf R, so it's kind of showing the age of the GTI. In terms of other features, this is the Autobahn package, so you have these leather bucket seats with the contrast red stitching, which could be an issue if you guys really like the plaid cloth. You'll get the plaid cloth on the lower trims vehicle. Now, I prefer leather, so I really like this. These seats themselves are also heated. Sorry, if you guys are looking for cooled seats, it's not available on this car, which is strange because you can get cooled seats on the Jetta GLI, and that car's cheaper. But looking at the rest of this interior, materials haven't changed. There's still a soft touch graining material here. You have this carbon fiber imitation look plastic with some real aluminum trim splashed on the door panels. The door panels themselves are also soft touch, and then you have one touch automatic up down for all 4 windows, so that's nice. Love the GTI's steering wheel here. It's got a flat bottom design. It feels really good in your hands. It's got more of that red stitching. Paddles on the wheel. This wheel itself is tilt and telescoping with a pretty big adjustability in terms of the range over here. Now, looking at the screen here, I've shown you guys this infotainment screen before, so I'm not going to go too much in depth with this. When you do put it in reverse here, you can see there is a backup camera that pops out. Unlike the new Arteon, which I showed you guys before, there is no 360 camera. Remember, this is a GTI, so I imagine VW will be updating that for the 2020 model year with a new infotainment screen here, which I'm hoping they'll do. You can see there is a performance monitor here where it'll show you your G's, your PSI of the turbo pressure. You can also go into like a lap timer here. Go over here, there's also an eco driving mode. It'll show your average fuel economy and stuff like that. The Autobahn package is the only one to give you embedded GPS, but because you don't have the digital cockpit display, you can't put it over there on the screen, so it's gonna stay there. There is a proximity sensor here, which is really nice. VW is actually one of the first to do the proximity sensor. I also like the way they have their presets or radio stations laid out. Even shows really great album art. So VW does a really good job with their infotainment system. Now, the one thing about the GTI is if you want dual zone climate control, you have to also get the Autobahn package. All the other trims will just have a single manual zone. There's a lot of buttons over here by the shifter, which is good. This car also has automatic parallel parking. It's got parking sensors. It's got an auto start stop. And then there's actually a physical button here to turn off the stability control, which is nice. Other VW products, you have to go into the menu here to turn off the stability control, which is kind of a problem. There's a traditional handbrake here, which is really cool. And then over here you have a nice big center console here that has the ability to adjust the armrest to be in another position that you'd like it to go into. Above me, this panoramic sunroof is included on the SE trims and up. You can see it does include a nice manual sunshade here. The seats, I also think they're really comfortable and supportive. They do have some nice aggressive bolsters, but they're not super aggressive to where if you're wide, you won't fit into this car. And then the glove box, you can see it's big, it's damped, but it's not lined with felt. So overall this interior is still pretty nice. I have an issue with the Jetta GLI having slightly more features in this car, but I will say the Jetta's interior feels a little bit cheaper. So there is a reason why the GTI still costs more, but I think it's time that VW needs to add the updated tech features, and I have imagined they will do that for the 2020 model year. So one of the reasons what made the GTI so popular with enthusiasts as their only car is the fact that you could easily use this as your daily driver. You could put your kids back here, you could put a bunch of stuff. Getting back here, you're still looking at around 35 inches of legroom, which matches that of what you get in the Civic hatchback, which is good. There is a fairly large hump here that does take up space in the middle passenger, but unlike most of the competitors, VW does give you some rear seat air vents back here. You have dual map pockets, and then the door panels, unfortunately, they are cheaper hard touch plastic. Older GTIs had much higher quality materials in the back seat. And then there's also a nice little armrest here that folds down to give you 2 cup holders. So obviously the GTI's back seat is still very usable, very good, but it's definitely not class leading in terms of space, but I think a lot of people are going to find a lot to like with this back seat. So it's pretty astonishing to realize that the GTI is in its last model year. I mean, I remember when this generation first came out, back in late 2014, I was obsessed with the Mark 7 GTI. This was the benchmark. This is what everybody salivated over. This is what all the other car manufacturers said, hey, there's a new GTI out. We have to benchmark this car. So the fact that VW is showing us a replacement in a year or next year, that is crazy. So how does the current generation stack up against the competition? How has it held up? Well, VW has thankfully kept this car mostly fresh over the years. This is the first time that I actually have a GTI back in DC for a week to test. I've driven this car over the years multiple times. The last one I showed you guys was back in Oregon when I had a 2018 DSG. This is when they put the new 7-speed in. Now it has 8 more horsepower. They've made the performance brakes and limited slip differential as standard, which most of you probably bought this car with it anyways. And the ride quality is still very good in a GTI. We just went over that rough patch of road over there, which I always test press cars on, and in comfort mode, it rides very well. This is the only trim, remember, to get the adaptive dampers. But this is a GTI, you know, obviously the other half of the equation with this car is going to be the sporty driving. So when you put this vehicle into its sports setting here, and then you turn off the traction control, remember this car is only front wheel drive. It does also activate the sound enhancer in this car, which I don't know if I particularly love, but let's see what this car is like to accelerate. Let me turn off the start stop. Put your foot hard on the brake. Launch control active, that is cool. And remember, the dual clutch is the only one that gives you the launch control, so it actually is pretty nice. I will say that that's the first time I actually got the launch control to activate, and it's cool because it actually says launch active and it spins out its tire a little bit, but as you guys saw, there was very little torque steer, little to no torque steer, some wheel spin, not really much in terms of wheel hop. So the GTI does a tremendous job at putting the power down to the pavement, which I think is super important, especially when you've got a front drive hot hatch with this much power. Now, the one thing I'm gonna get, or I'm gonna talk about immediately, is the fact that the 8 horsepower, I don't feel a difference. It doesn't really feel that much quicker. With the dual clutch, the GTI should get to 60 in just a tick under 6 seconds. You're looking at 5.9, 5.8 seconds. The manual is probably about a half a second slower, which is a shame because, you know, I love driving manuals, but this dual clutch is just way more effective at putting the power down. And this is where the GTI and the Golf R comparisons come to play, because the Golf R with the manual is like 5.5 seconds, and if you've got the dual clutch, it's about 4.9 seconds, so just under 5 seconds. So it is a smidge quicker, about a second quicker, comparing it to the GTI. But the Golf R is just so much more expensive. That's the reason why a lot of people are saying, oh, well, why do you need the all-wheel drive? Just get a GTI. These are just as much fun, and they're almost as quick. The one thing this engine has a little bit, though, is turbo lag. I am noticing it is a little soft below 3,000 RPM, but once you pass 2,500, the turbo wakes up, and this thing will seriously take off. Now let's try the launch control one more time, just because we can. Now there was a little bit of wheel hop there, so consistency is important, and this is with a front wheel drive car, you're struggling for the traction. Remember, this car has almost 260 pound-feet of torque. I will say that the dual clutch transmission has an on-off personality for me. There are times where I think this dual clutch shifts incredibly well, incredibly quick, and then there are times where I find the transmission is sleeping. There is an instant where, let's say you're cruising along at 40 miles an hour right here, you're trying to pass somebody, you put your foot to the floor. The transmission is quick to downshift to a lower gears, but then there's a second delay from when it's transferring the power from the engine through the transmission to the drive or to the front wheels. There is that second delay there, which is really frustrating. So I'm not entirely sure why it does that. It almost feels like the transmission is slipping. It's still a really great dual clutch, but it's almost as if the VW group puts their best dual clutches in Porsches. They trickle it down to the lower trims, but then they put in a dumbed down computer to deal with the power transfer in these Volkswagens. They're still very good, don't get me wrong. This is way better than what you're going to get from Ford with their power shift transmission, Hyundai with their eco shift transmissions. So this is still a great dual clutch to use, but when you drive a Porsche, you kind of notice that the PDK in a Porsche is just much quicker to respond than what you get in this car. Now, in terms of the handling, GTIs have always been great. This one here has summer performance tires, so the steering itself is electric. It is very quick. The body stays relatively flat. The car feels like it can handle extremely well. Remember, this is the The MQB platform was the first car to debut the MQB platform. It's still great. Even in sport mode here, the ride quality is really comfortable. And this is why the GTI is still the perfect hot hatch as a daily driver, because it's so comfortable when you want it to be. Yet when you put into sport mode, you start attacking your favorite back roads, it can be sporty as well. And that's very important when you're looking at a daily driver as a hot hatch. The visibility in here is also excellent. The GTI is one of the few vehicles in the segment that offers the driver assistance stuff, which works okay. I mean, this is not like amazingly advanced, Audi quality, Volvo, Tesla quality driver assistance stuff, but you have their front assist, automatic braking standard. You've got lane keep assist, lane departure warning. This one here has adaptive cruise control as well because it has the dual clutch. And overall, it's still a very pleasant car to drive on a daily basis. Front wheel drive. You can sort of feel that limited slip diff doing its magic there. It's trying to appropriate the power to the wheel with the most grip. This car's still fun. It puts a smile on my face, and I actually enjoy driving this car a little bit more than I drove the Golf R. I don't know. It's really strange because the Golf R obviously was a manual. This feels almost as quick as the Golf R, just you're dealing with the wheel spin a little bit that you don't deal with in the Golf R. The engine is interesting because it's got that sound enhancer noise. You'll have to let me know if you guys like the sound. It just sounds very synthesized and a little too much, if you're asking me. There's just too much fake noise that's being synthesized in. There's not really much coming out from the back. All I hear is it all in the front here from the speakers that are amplifying it. But basically the GTI is still very much a GTI in the way it drives. It's amazing how consistent Volkswagen is with the driving dynamics of this car, which leaves me wondering, what are they going to do for the next generation model? How much more power are they going to give it? Are they going to leave the manual transmission available? Is it still going to be front wheel drive? I mean, obviously, those are questions that VW will have to answer whenever they do show the new GTI. I do see them adding another 50 horsepower. I mean, 275 would probably be a really great number that they could hit, or at least 250 would be nice. And then the Golf R having over 300 horsepower. Because remember, there is no regular Golf coming back to the States. We're only going to be having a GTI and a Golf R, which is fine by me because the GTI really is the sweet spot still. And it's pretty easy to see why there is such a loyal group of followers with this car and why a lot of people choose it as their daily driver, just their one car that you can have fun with at the track. You can take it to and from work, you can take it out on date night, you can put people and stuff in this thing, and really pack it on a long road trip. It is still very much the quintessential hot hatch. So the Volkswagen GTI will always hold a special place in my heart just because I've always loved the GTI. In fact, I owned one of these cars. I owned a Mark 6 GTI back in 2013 for almost a year. It was a 6-speed manual 2-door. And although Volkswagen doesn't make the 2-door GTI in America anymore, the 4-door model still represents one of the best hot hatches you can buy here in the States. Even though this car is about to be replaced, it really shows just how good Volkswagen is at keeping this car fresh. Even though there's a lot of new competition out there, as you guys saw, the GTI is still incredibly quick to drive. It offers a choice between a 6-speed manual or that lovely dual clutch transmission. The fact that it's front wheel drive doesn't really hold it back because there isn't really too much in terms of torque, steer, and wheel hop. There is a little bit, but it's pretty manageable for a hot hatch, especially with this much power and this much torque. And I also love the looks of this car. It doesn't look dated whatsoever. My personal pick will probably be the Rabbit Edition because the Rabbit Edition is about $7,000 cheaper than this one, although you are giving up a couple of features like the sunroof, the dual zone climate control, the driver assistance tech, which I imagine most of you are looking for a GTI would probably just leave that stuff anyways. So with all that said, it's time to give the GTI an RPM rating, starting with the R in Redline for real world usage. I'm gonna give the GTI a 7 out of 10 points, which is pretty much the same as what I gave its sister car, the Golf R, and the same as what I would give a Honda Civic Type R because this is a 4-door hatch. It's got a lot of trunk space. It's got a pretty decent sized back seat. Moving on to the E for efficiency, I would also give the GTI a 7 out of 10 points because this car runs on regular gas. I got about 26 miles to the gallon in my mixed driving. It'll easily do over 30 mpg. So this is a really easy car on the wallet in terms of fuel efficiency if you're going to daily drive it. Now moving on to the D for desirability, I gave the GTI a 6 out of 10 points simply because it's rated less by the Golf R by 1 and the Type R by 2 for me, because the GTI is a little more common. There's a lot of them out there, which doesn't make it a bad thing. It just kind of makes it a little bit less desirable in my eyes because it's not quite as rare as something like a Golf R or Civic Type R. Now moving on to the L, Redline for longevity. This is a Volkswagen product, and that's always the question of controversy or subject of controversy when it comes to reliability. These cars thankfully are very solidly built. They have really impeccable build quality, but they also are over-engineered, and they tend to have a lot of issues after the warranty goes out. I would give this car a 6 out of 10 points for durability, and really I'm giving it a little bit of higher score because VW still offers a 6-year, 72,000 mile full comprehensive warranty on this car as of 2019. Unfortunately for 2020, they are downgrading that warranty to 4 years or 50,000 miles, which is still better than what Honda does or what Toyota does, but just keep that in mind. If you guys buy a 19 model, you'll get a little bit of a better warranty versus a 20 model. Now moving on to the I for innovation, I would also give the GTI a 6 out of 10 points simply because, yes, it does offer a lot of features for the money. However, the Jetta GLI now has more features than this car in terms of tech, and it's also less expensive. Now, granted, this is a hatchback. It's got a little bit nicer interior, but VW does have some work to do with the next generation GTI to make this thing a little bit more innovative, at least for me. Now, moving on to the N for need for speed, I would give the GTI also a 6 out of 10 points because this car is definitely quick. However, the Golf R, I rated that 1 point higher because it is a little bit quicker than this, but regardless of the transmission, you're gonna find that the GTI offers plenty of performance with a 0 to 60 time of around 6 seconds. Now, of course, last but not least, the final E for expense, I'm also gonna give the GTI a 6 out of 10 points because this car definitely is still a great value. It starts at around $27,500 plus the destination charge. The Rabbit Edition is really the sweet spot at around $29,000. Add $1,100 if you guys want the dual clutch transmission. This is where the GTI gets a little too expensive for me, and it's why I docked it for points. This fully loaded Autobahn model stickers for about $37,500. That's the same price as a brand new 2019 Civic Type R, if you could find one at sticker price. Now, granted, I do know that a lot of VW dealers are discounting this thing significantly, and around here, around the DC area, I've been seeing VW dealers discount this to around $30,000. So I think at 30 grand, this is a really good deal, and it's probably why I would give this thing a little bit of a higher score if you guys stick at the lower end, but just know it's gonna depend on your deal. But with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on this 2019 Volkswagen GTI Autobahn. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews. Like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.